welcome to the Soulful Badass podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Jackson, an intuitive success coach from the UK, and I'm here to help entrepreneurs, leaders, and soul-aligned goddesses to create epic levels of success and impact in your life and your business. So if that sounds good to you, make sure you are tuning in every week for mindset talk, manifestation, magic, and incredible interviews with other soul-aligned entrepreneurs. So hit the subscribe button, and I'd love to invite you to come and join the Soulful Badass community. All the links are in the show notes. Please go and click them, and I'll see you in there. Hi everyone. On today's episode, I am so excited to announce that I've got one of my ex-clients, Jen Wilson, and she is a wellness coach who is absolutely incredible. Her story from burnout to now helping women overcome their own stress journeys is incredible. There is so many ahas and moments that you will take from this podcast episode, so I can't wait to share it with you, and I hope you enjoy it. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's podcast. I am so excited to announce I have Jen Wilson, one of my good friends, on the call today, and she is a wellness coach. So hi Jen.
Hi.
Do you want to share with everybody who you are, what you do, and a bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. I'm Jen Wilson. I am a wellness coach and I help women overcome stress and exhaustion so they can be more present, enjoy life, and have fun again.
Amazing. Now, how did you get into that, Jen? Because that's quite a needed niche. Everybody does need that. So how did you get into helping women in that area?
Yeah, well, it comes about from my own story, really. Having struggled with chronic stress for over a decade.
Yeah.
It's a really long story, which started kind of about 2008, 2009. And it was brought on, my stress originally was brought on in the workplace.
Yeah.
And I was signed off long-term with stress, anxiety, and depression. Prior to that, it built up for quite a few years, but I didn't really understand what stress was. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what was wrong. I had all these symptoms. And I remember actually reading a magazine article that had this 2-page spread on stress, and it had this box with all these symptoms in, and I was like, yeah, got that. And I had them all, and I was like, oh, I'm just stressed. Yeah, I'm just stressed. I'm not seriously ill. I'm just stressed. So I kind of just parked it and carried on. But that carrying on led to me having a complete burnout, and that was when I was signed off long term.
Yeah. And what were you feeling up to that point? Because I think there's going to be a lot of people listening that don't actually know them symptoms and do think, they're just tired, they're just overwhelmed. Like, what were you feeling?
So I would describe it as like an accumulation of symptoms that kind of built up over time. And I think that's why it was suddenly then a problem. It was things like I was feeling quite tearful, crying a lot. I had kind of muscular aches and pains. I was exhausted. I was forgetful. I couldn't concentrate. I found it really hard to just kind of be present and in the moment. And as things got worse, I started then having problems with my digestion. So I started getting like constipation, diarrhea, was really ill after I ate, which I then found out was irritable bowel syndrome, which had been brought on by stress.
Wow.
I then had headaches every single day for over 2 years. The only difference in them was the severity, but I'd go to bed with one and I'd wake up with one, and it was just there constantly, which I now know were tension headaches brought on by stress. But you kind of just think, oh, if I go to bed, I won't have it tomorrow, and I won't have it tomorrow. And it just went on and on and on and on. And then when it got really bad, I kind of I'd describe it as struggling to get through the day. So I'd get through the day, I'd get home and I'd just flake out on the sofa, and I wouldn't move till it was time to go to bed and then start the day again. I came very detached. I lost enjoyment in many things that I once liked to do. It was just kind of like no fun in life. It was very robotic, just going through the motions. When I was signed off, when I was eventually practically, as a grown woman, nearly dragged to the doctors by my mum, who said, if you don't go, I will come and physically take you myself.
Love mums.
So I know, yeah. So I went and I was signed off longer term. And I'd just like to say, prior to that, I had actually already been signed off once, but I only took a few weeks because I thought in my head, well, work's the problem. And if I don't go and face it, then nothing's going to change.
Right.
So I went back to work thinking, come on, get on with this. Everything will be fine. And the reality was that I went back to work, and after all the stress they'd put me under, not one thing on my desk had been touched and nothing had really been done. So I was just thrown straight back in. And I lasted a few more weeks before I was then nearly physically taken to the doctors by my mum, like I said. And when it got to that point, I remember that people were speaking to me, and I can only describe it as I could see the mouths moving, but I couldn't tell you a word they were saying.
Wow.
There was just nothing. There was just nothing there. I didn't feel or think anything about anything or anyone. I was just totally numb to like absolutely everything around me.
Yeah.
Which now when I say out loud, like so many years on, it's like, how did I possibly think that was okay to be like that,
I suppose when you're at that point, you don't, you've gone too far to realise.
You're in too deep and it's taken a hold, and you can't see it. So when you've got, and I was very good at going to work and putting a front on, everything's fine. So nobody actually really knew. So when I was signed off, everyone was like, whoa, like, where's Jen gone? What's going on?
Yeah.
But family knew, and it's the people closest to you that are trying to tell you. But when you're in so deep, you can't. Well, you're numb. I was just numb. That's the only way I can describe it, really. So you can't see it, really.
Yeah. And you've got that real, we've known each other for a bit, so you've got that real worth ethic as well, that it's very important to be doing and being productive, and that energy, isn't it? That's a driver that's going to override your own health.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just want to get on and be capable and able, don't you? Because interestingly, there was actually a lady where I was working who'd been signed off when I was there, and she'd been signed off with stress. And I feel really ashamed now to admit that I was a bit like many people. That, oh, what's wrong with her? I've seen her walking into town. But why is she off work?
Yeah.
I was like in my early 20s, I was ignorant, naive, I didn't know. And now, having lived it and experienced it, I would obviously never think like that again. I would never make that judgment, because it's a place natural. That
People do that though, and I think that's the stigma around it, that actually it's not something, unless somebody is flying off the handle, it's not something you can always see. And with yourself, nobody's seen it coming. So there is a stigma around it, definitely. And I think it's getting better, but there's a stigma you feel yourself as well, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I've been in them places where I was stressed and not realising how much it was affecting everything in my life. But you just keep going, you just, you power through, and it destroys everything around without realising that, you're going in and putting this front on, but actually totally dying inside. So,
that's a good way of putting it. You do feel like you're dying inside.
Yeah. God, I think back now to some of the jobs and some of the people I worked for, and the worst points in my life. That's why I'm now a leadership and mindset coach.
Gets you where you are, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So it helps, but in a way.
Yeah. So I was signed off long term, and those early months, it was my husband. Well, he wasn't my husband then, actually, but he is now. So he stuck by me, which is great. He used to come and say, "What have you done today?" And I was like, "Well, I got up and I brushed my teeth and I got dressed and I took the dogs for a walk."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Is that it?" And I'm like, because that was literally, I was so burnt out. That was literally all I could do physically and mentally, like, cope with in a day, which if you know me, like what I achieve usually in a day is like far away from that. So that was a real shock. So part of that being off, I was sent for different kind of counselling and CBT and trying this and trying that. And I don't think any of it really worked, if I'm honest. And at the time, I think because I was in the headspace where I just really wanted somebody to flick a magic switch and make it all go away and make it all better. It wasn't happening quick enough. And I was like, well, there's got to be something. So, you try all these different things. And then I woke up one day and something just clicked. And I just thought, there's only one person that can make this better. and that's me.
Wow. Yeah.
But I didn't have a clue how that was going to be possible, but I knew I had to stop holding on for other people to make it right and trying to hold other people accountable for why wasn't I like getting better.
That's a big realization, Jen.
Yeah, and I don't honestly know where it came from. It was just there, and don't get me wrong, nothing magic happened from that. But there was something in the back of my head that was saying, you know, you need to do. I didn't know what to do, if I'm honest. I didn't have a clue.
Yeah.
But I knew something had to change.
Yeah.
And I actually decided to do some training. So because of the irritable bowel that was brought on by stress, I developed an interest in nutrition because I had to change what I was eating. And I thought, well, I'll do a course, learn a bit more about nutrition. And I was looking at courses and I thought, well, if I'm going to do a course, I may as well get a recognised qualification. And the other thing alongside the nutrition was exercise. So even in the height of that really bad period before I got signed off, I still religiously went to an exercise class twice a week.
Yeah.
And I used to stand in the queue. I'm going home. I'm staying. I'm going home. I'm staying.
Yeah.
Please take my money. Start the class. I'm going home. I'm staying. It was this mental battle.
Yeah.
Once I'd done it, I came out feeling so much better. So at that point, I recognised like the power of exercise for helping me feel better in the situation I was in. So I'm telling you that because what I decided to do was to do a personal training diploma. I just thought, let's do it. So I did it. I rang up, I booked, and I started that training while I was still off work. Maybe not in hindsight the best idea, but I did. And somehow I managed to get through the training. Yeah. I'm still not quite sure how I did because mentally my head still wasn't in the game, but I did. Yeah. And then I met this local guy who had a health and rehabilitation gym working with people with all different kinds of illnesses. And I was like, well, that sounds really good because I'd already seen the power of exercise for myself. And I went to see him and he said, yeah, you carry on with your training. And I came away a bit disappointed because he didn't have any jobs. And then a few weeks later, he just rang me out of the blue and offered me a job. So I took it and I left all the crap behind that was in that really stressful office-based job. Yeah. So I thought, yeah, this is it. This is like the fresh start I need. And everything felt really good. It wasn't stressful. It was really enjoyable. It was really laid back. I was working generally with like the older population, sort of 65, 70 upwards. It was a really good crack all day with them, you know, as well as doing the exercise. But what I will say, although that was a huge change and I didn't have that stress anymore, it was always underlying. Yeah. Like I can only just describe it. Can't think like the words I use now, but it was always just under there, very close to the surface. Yeah. Like you hadn't dealt with it. You just buried it and the external got a bit better. I did nothing. I left the job. I got a new job and thought everything was going to be fine. So it was buried, but it was there. It was very close to the surface. And like the slightest little thing would just tip me over the edge and I'd be like really, you know, upset and back in that place. But I still didn't do anything because I didn't know what to do. So I just, it'll get better. It'll get better. So I just carried on as you do. And it wasn't a bad few years. Like it was a heck of a lot better than it was. But you know, when you just know you're still not yourself. Yeah. So tell us more what happened next. From that, there was working there. I then we started to try for a family. And then I couldn't conceive. So then we had to go through IVF, which was really stressful. Yeah. And then we'd also bought a house that needed renovating. So then we were also living with my in-laws. So now I say this out loud. So I was going through IVF, I was renovating a house, I was living with my in-laws and I was going to work full time. So that was a whole new level of stress. You don't make anything easy for yourself. No, not really, no. And when I say it out loud now, I'm like, seriously, what were you thinking? But life flows, doesn't it? And you just do the next thing. So anyway, that went on and the IVF wasn't successful. And we were due to have another round because my husband said, don't have any regrets. I didn't want to because it was pretty grueling. Yeah. And he was like, let's just do it. And then we can, you know, you won't have any regrets. Whereas mine was like, can we just not do it and get on with life? Yeah. For me, life felt very much on hold at that point. Yeah. We decided to go for our next prescription and it was just before Christmas. We were going to travel up to Newcastle to the hospital to pick it up. And 4 days before we were due to go, I found out I was pregnant. Wow. So that was a lovely icing on, you know, like nice way for it to happen as well. I had then had quite a stressful pregnancy and various things going wrong. I then had a really stressful birth. various things went wrong there and a long recovery. But then I was off on maternity leave. So I was just in this amazingly happy bubble with my baby. But when I look back now, there was still a lot of moments within that where I was having complete meltdowns because I still hadn't dealt with the stress.
Yeah.
So the stress from the work, then the stress from everything else leading up to that point.
It becomes your emotional state, even though we don't want the stress and we don't like the stress, it becomes your normal operating mode.
Yeah, and it was definitely mine for years. And it's not until now when I'm really out of it that I realise my maternity leave was wonderful, but there was still a lot in there that was just reacting because I still hadn't dealt with that internal and sort of the mental side of the, of the stress. So I then decided I didn't want to go back to work. I decided I wanted to set up my own business. And that came about because I was always out. Having dogs, you've got to be out. So even if I'd had sleepless nights, even if I was having like a bad day with my son, I had to take the dogs out.
Yeah.
And I used to go out dragging my feet sometimes. I don't want to do this. I'm exhausted, you know.
Yeah.
But like 20 minutes in, I was bouncing. I felt amazing. Come home like a different person. And it got to the point where I used to pack lunch and bottles, and I'd just take off with the pram and the dogs, and I'd just be out as much as I could anywhere.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, where's all the other mums? Why is nobody else out with the babies, like benefiting from this? So from that, I decided I would set up an outdoor postnatal exercise class to get mums and babies out. So that was my business for quite a few years. However, still renovating a house, still with a small baby, running a business, hadn't dealt with all the other stuff I've just told you about. It's no surprise that burnout number 2 wasn't very far away.
Yeah.
And it actually hit me when COVID happened, actually, because the November before that, I knew that if I'd been employed by someone, I would have gone to the doctors and I would have been signed off with stress.
Yeah.
Stress, anxiety, and depression like last time. But I was self-employed, so how could I possibly go and be signed off? Because who was going to do my job? So come on, Jen, you can do this, head down, crack on, you know. And I hid this, like my husband didn't know how I was feeling. Nobody really knew. I just tried my best to cope with it and get on like I always do. Anyway, I was forced to stop because I couldn't do my fitness job when COVID hit. And I just remember turning around to my husband and saying, thank God somebody has given me permission to stop.
Wow.
And he looked at me and he was like, and he realised then. And I remember it was like, I'd describe it, well, it was a burnout. It wasn't quite as severe as the first one, but I just felt like I'd hit the wall. So from like, was it March, April time when that happened?
Yeah.
Don't think I came to until about September. Wow. It took me months. So for me, I had that feeling of guilt because I knew COVID was like a really, really stressful time for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But for me, I was just so grateful that somebody had allowed me to stop.
Yeah.
And then I was
a lot of people felt that as well. I wouldn't, you know, it was a time to pause and reflect, and a time where you would never normally get.
Yeah. So within however many weeks into that time, I was just like, what am I doing? This has got to stop. Like, I've got a son, like he's 4 years old and I'm in this state. Like, what is this about? And that was like my turning point. I thought something's really got to change now. This cannot go on. So I decided to, all the stuff I'd been told about for years, that I'd just kind of like, time. You know, about taking better care of myself, setting boundaries, all that sort of stuff that I knew about, but I'd just dismissed.
Yeah.
Although to some extent, I did try a lot of that stuff, but previously I was so frazzled and so wound up. I just couldn't do it. Does that make sense? I remember going to a yoga class and I couldn't sit still to be there. I was just so agitated all the time. Yeah. So I had dabbled in the past, but I'd never really fully committed to.
I suppose it's like when you exercise, if you're a bigger size, then you just weight train without doing the healthy eating and losing the weight. You're just building the muscle on top of what's already there. So you're just getting bigger in a sense. Whereas, you're getting firmer. But once you stop the weights, it just goes back to what was there.
Yeah.
I always think of that kind of analogy. You just build it on top of something, but you're not removing what's already underneath, so you're not taking that layer of fat out.
Absolutely. So I started making many changes, particularly business side. I put a lot more boundaries in place and started making a bit more time for myself. And I did feel better, but something still wasn't right.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really put my finger on it. I just felt really, really unsettled. And my mind was just racing like 24/7. I used to call it messy. I think the first time I approached you, I was like, my head's a mess. And
I remember that conversation.
I don't know how I can describe it. It just never stopped. Like everywhere I was, there was just all this stuff flying around. What should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? I didn't know what to do with my business. I didn't know what to do with this, with that. And yeah, things were better, but they still really weren't better.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I kind of got to December of that year after COVID, and I was just like, I need some help. I need some more support off somebody, because I've done all this other stuff, but there's like something up here that's holding me back.
Yeah.
And that's when I approached you and said, "Hey, Rachel, can you help me?" I don't think I was quite that cool and calm, but
but we met. So obviously, there's a dog walking club, kind of unofficially, and I'd met your son first through my dad, I think, and just happened to meet you on a dog walk and noticed your son. I was like, "Oh, are you?" I think I noticed your dog. I don't even think you were with your son, and I was like, "Oh, are you such and such's mum?" We just randomly got chatting and connected, didn't we? And
straight away.
Yeah, there was just something there. And then I'm so grateful when you reached out and, asked to just chat and see what could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to share a bit more about what kind of come to light for you through that time?
Yeah, definitely. So we went for a walk ourselves, didn't we? And had a chat, and I told you what was going on, and I just decided to go for it, working with you, because I just knew had to, to do something. We started working together, and a big part of that, I think, for me, was that timeline, that life timeline we did together, of like everything that had happened.
Yeah.
Since as far back as I could remember, and being able to acknowledge all the stuff that had gone on.
Yeah.
And to understand, that's why I'm kind of where I am. And I've never been a woe is me and, oh, look at me, oh, poor me, that happened to me. I've never been in that mindset. So that's probably why I've dismissed so much of what's happened as being a problem, because you just pick yourself up and you get on, don't you? There's no point. But seeing that was a big eye opener for a start, acknowledging that, because that's huge, isn't it? That it was all that stuff that got me to where I was.
Yeah. And I think you come in with that bit of attitude, right, let's just get on and make this better, like from now. And I'm like, whoa, let's just have a look at what and I think this will resonate with so many people. When you've got strong women who are career driven and really want to do something good, they can be driven so much that they do just drive over themselves, in a sense, and not see them things that they've actually already been through. Yeah. And I think that's where you were at the time. You just like, right, let's move on, get this better. But actually you weren't seeing everything that you'd actually overcome already.
No, definitely not. And I don't think I really appreciate how all the stuff had impacted me, because like I say, I'm not a kind of feel sorry for myself. You just pick yourself up and I get on with the next thing, and it's kind of packed and done. But to acknowledge that is huge. Mm-hmm. It's obviously having a huge impact on you as a person, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a reminder, like you just said, that you have already overcome so much. So although you're not in a good place or the place you want to be, you've still already gone through a lot and overcome a lot. So and I had to sit with a lot of uncomfortable things, didn't I, Rachel?
Yeah. We had a lot of conversations about guards and walls up and and one of the things that's natural.
One of the things that really sticks out for me, and I still giggle about this, and I thought about it the other day actually, was Rachel said to me about relaxing more, and I literally just laughed in your face, didn't I?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, right, whatever. That's just never going to happen. Like, no, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because I just didn't have the ability.
I think it stressed you out, the thought of it.
It totally did. I was like, that's not possible, because I've just spent so many years go, do, and just so wound up, and like, I was like, no, I'm not going to relax. However, at the time I started working with you, I did purposely not take on additional stuff at work because I knew I wanted that breathing space to work through this stuff.
Yeah.
And that for me was probably one of the biggest uncomfortable parts, was having nothing to do and being comfortable with it.
Yeah.
That was the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah. Probably the biggest lesson you needed.
Oh God, yeah, to slow down and just take a breath.
Yeah.
Yeah, we worked through all various things, didn't we? And it was specifically around mindset.
Yeah.
And I remember we'd only been working together a few weeks and my head already felt clearer.
Yeah.
Like I could go on a walk and my mind wasn't like racing 10 to the dozen.
Yeah.
The key thing for me was like journaling. And I still do that every day now. Like that was massive. And I used to turn my nose up at stuff like that.
Me too.
For God's sake. Meditating, yeah, whatever.
If somebody told me like 7 years ago, journaling, gratitude and meditation was going to completely transform your life, I would have laughed in their face. I'd have been exactly the same.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it works, doesn't it? And then you're hooked, aren't you?
Yeah.
So yeah, I was sat at home one night. My husband was at work. I was sat on the sofa with one of my dogs, just not doing anything in particular. I think I had the TV on. See that? I wasn't doing anything in particular. How good's that?
Yeah.
And this is no word of a lie. What I did, I just went, I know what I could do. And my dog like looked at me, and I genuinely did say this out loud. I'm not making this up. I was like, I could be a wellness coach, and I could like help other women now overcome stress so they don't have to suffer like I did. And then I was like, is there even such a thing as a wellness coach? So I got my computer out and I started Googling, and I found there were such things as wellness coaches. Like, oh, this is really good. And I was really excited. And then, of course, I talked myself out of it because I thought, well, that's a ridiculous idea because you've only been working with Rachel for a few weeks. How could you possibly like make a big decision like that? But it never went away.
No.
And I just kept looking at it. And then I don't quite know what happened to me. I thank you for this. I just decided to go for it. And I didn't just go for it. I really went for it. I wrapped my business up. I told everyone I was finishing, and I signed up to train to be a wellness coach.
Yeah.
Just like that.
And I always remember on that first walk, I said to you, there is something so much bigger that you're meant to be doing. We've just got to find what it is. And you were like, I remember you looking at me like,
I think I looked at you like that many times. Like, what is she on about? Whatever.
He's like, I just want to feel better now. I'm not worried about bigger. But I was like, I can, and I suppose that's my superpower. I see that potential and I see what's coming, in a sense, I suppose being intuitive. I've seen that. And to get there within, like 3 sessions, you booked 6 sessions, Jen, and you didn't even need the 6th till, probably a year later. You were
the wobble earlier this year or last year, didn't I? And I took it.
You'd done 5 and you were, flying. And it's just, and this is what I say to people, it's just about really calming all that busy nonsense thoughts that we have and letting your true self really show you the way. And that's the bit we don't do when we're stressed and we're in that state. Yeah. So
that's definitely the biggest lesson for me, that just quieting all that crap down that just goes round and round. Because even now, naturally, you still have those moments where the mind takes over. It gets busy, but then I journal it out and I meditate and I go for a walk, and the stuff that just like comes through to you without thinking. Yeah. Because you're not weighed down by all that rubbish, because it is rubbish, isn't it? It's just like nonsense.
Yeah, it is. It's not true.
No. So I started my training, and what was really interesting, they encourage you as you're doing it to still work on elements of your well-being. So the way that they taught this, they had this thing called Wellness 360, which was 12 elements that affect your well-being. So like things that indirectly affect you and things that indirectly affect you. And every single one of them was something, I'd experienced an element of every single one of them, but just on my own personal journey of trying to find the way and trying to find the answer. So it was like all these like pieces of this puzzle just slotting into place. And I'd already lived every element of it. And what I realised from that all the stuff I'd done before I met you, the missing piece for me was mindset. Yeah. because I'd done all the other stuff, but I was still really, really stuck and still really not in a particularly good place.
Yeah.
Like obviously much better, but and I said to you, just something's not right, and I just can't quite put my finger on it. And it was mindset.
Yeah.
It's been
belief you could have a successful business was really the shift that we were battling with, in a sense that you'd had so much struggle in it that you just couldn't see that how could it then just be easy? And you did shift that.
Yeah, so I really went into it because I've been asked various questions by business people of like, who's your target market and what you're doing, this, that, and the other for. And I was like, I had no grand plan. Like someone brings a product to the market, they're going to sell this wonderful face cream that does such and such. I had no grand plan. It was just this really natural journey. And I ended up training to do that because of my journey.
Yeah.
And I specifically want to help other women because I don't want other women to suffer like I did. Like I spent 12 years.
Yeah.
12 years of like that from that first, from when stress, the first symptoms started creeping in to like coming out the other side.
Yeah.
And I just wish like, there's a lot I wish I'd known. I wish I'd understood. I wish I'd known the implications of it long term rather than being naive and thinking everything would be okay, And I just think that if I can help other women.
Yeah.
And I know that people generally come for help when they're broken. I'd love to catch them all before they're broken, but I know that's not human nature.
Yeah.
But even to help people come out of it quicker.
Yeah.
Not spend 10, 12 years like trying to work it out on their own. If they could do it in 12 months.
Yeah.
It's not a quick fix. It takes trial and error and finding what works for you. But to have somebody to guide you who gets it, it's huge, isn't it?
Yeah. And as you were telling your story, I always say, you can't connect the dots at the time when you're in it, but when you look back, you can put it all together. And the map of the journey you've been on has got you exactly to where you're meant to be and the thing that you're meant to be doing. Unfortunately, it took a series of not so nice events to get you there.
Yeah. I do always think of you saying that you're exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I always have that in my head when I'm having like a little wobble about something. I'm like, no, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. But I've always interestingly had that view that everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
I think like, even though I've always had that, I never really fully got it until I've ended up here doing this, because now it all makes more sense.
Yeah.
If you get me.
Yeah. And the thing is, everything aligns to where you're meant to be and to push you into your highest version. But that mindset bit's the key. So the choice to actually pursue that and become who you are now is a choice, whereas you could have quite easily carried on in a space of just repeating that cycle.
Totally.
So, that's where the people who are here to make real impact for people make that choice that actually I'm going to use all of that and do something good with it.
And I know like the big key thing for me is all that stuff that I dabbled in. It's now a daily routine.
Yeah.
I do stuff every day. Because I was coaching someone the other day and she's like, so you mean you still do stuff to manage your stress? And I'm like, well, yeah, totally. Like I know in my fitness, like when I had my fitness business, people come to me if I didn't go running because I was a personal trainer. I'm like, I hate running. Why would I want to go running? And I ate cake and things. I'm just human.
Yeah.
So like I still have to do things daily. And when I say do things daily, I journal every morning, I meditate, I do a yoga. That's my morning routine.
Yeah, amazing.
I'm out in the fresh air. I go for walks quite a lot. And I have to do everything every day. And I notice them. I notice when I don't do it. It would be very easy for me to go back and to let things get on top of me and for things to get too much. But I manage it. So I don't have that stress. It's hard to explain. I don't have the stress I had, but I could still easily be stressy kind of.
I always think of it as like proactive and reactive moments when it comes to stress. So and building your fuel tank. So when you think of our stress levels, our resilience is a fuel tank in a sense. And if we just keep depleting it without feeding it, we're going to get to empty soon. And so you've got your proactive things that you do every day, like you say. So what that does is it builds up that fuel tank constantly. So yeah, there's going to be things coming out of it. There's going to be stressful situations every single day that people deal with. But if you're not pouring into it daily, then you're going to be running on empty quicker.
Yeah.
And then you've got that, the things you do in the moment. So once you have that stressful situation, you have them things. If you have a stressful situation or somebody talks to you out of line or something, you have them mechanics that you put in place to calm you down at the moment. So you'll take a deep breath, or you'll go out for a walk, or them type of things. But they're reactive, they're more in the moment. But what I've noticed through doing the work that we do, that I don't have the same reaction now to them stressful situations. So because my tank is so full most of the time, and not all of the time, we are human, but because it's so full most of the time, my reaction doesn't go from like 0 to 10. It goes from like 0 to a simmering 7 or something. So I'm never as stressed or as flare up, because my go-to would probably be anger. Don't have that flare up of anger or feel that red mist coming over or anything like that, because my tank's full.
That's what I was going to say, that, like you call it, that topping up, it affects how you react, doesn't it? And then you recover quicker. So it's kind of done and dusted, as opposed to being there for too long.
Yeah. So everybody needs to have those proactive techniques, because without them, you're just running on empty and you're not ready for anything stressful to come your way.
Yeah, absolutely. So
new business. Oh, go on.
I was just going to say, because I wanted to share this with like people that are listening, because I know what was really hard for me was that that slowing down, that having boundaries for work, that how can I possibly get more done in less time, and I must be working all these hours. That has gone out of the window. I start work at 10 in the morning because I like to have a walk after the school drop off and get ready. I usually work till the school pick up. I now work less hours. I achieve more. I have absolutely no issue with walking away from my desk and going for a walk if I'm struggling with something, because I know that as soon as I'm on my walk, it comes to me. I've got really firm boundaries. I'm now able to, when I close my computer, I'm finished. I never used to be able to, I was always working in the evenings. I've got to get Owen to bed because I've got to do my work, and I've got to do stuff at the weekends. Now my computer's off at 4. It's not until 10 the next morning. I don't do anything at the weekends. Now, don't get me wrong. If something comes to me creative, I have a choice. I will go and do it. I just think it's a big message, because I used to be very much, I've got to work all these hours because I've got a business and I've got to do this. And now it couldn't be more different, really. And the big thing for me from that is being present for Owen.
Yeah.
And not just Owen, for other people, and for my husband, for family, because when you're constantly distracted, when your mind's constantly distracted, you're there, but you're not there.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for me, my son questions me, are you listening? Well, what did I just say? And you're like,
he is the most switched on little boy.
So those people that maybe are like at that point where they think they've got to work all hours, I can't possibly slow down, I can't possibly stop, I can't possibly do more in less time. You totally can. And you believe me, if I can do it, I was like before, Rachel, like anybody can. They really can.
Yeah, and that was a big thing we worked on. It was like, if you feel you can't take a day off, that's when you need to take a day off.
Yeah.
And it just feels counterintuitive to people, but it works, because once you have that freedom and you feel that relaxation more, like you say, you're not busy with the stuff that's nonsense. You're busy with the stuff that actually moves you forward, which is the difference between having a successful business or having a business that's going to burn you out.
Yeah. Well, I look back now and I think all the hours I used to put in, I used to achieve absolutely naff all. Like really, like nothing that was moving me forward. I was still going with what I was doing, but it wasn't progressing my business in any way, or I wasn't really achieving anything, but I had so much to do. I was so busy, but like what actually I was doing now, when I look back, I have absolutely no clue, honestly.
Yeah.
Whereas now I do know, because it's just there, and I go with what. And don't get me wrong, I still have moments where I question and I have little wobbles, and I think we all do. But I'm really, really starting to, when something comes to me, like I want to run, I'm going to do it. I'm not just going like, shouldn't I? What will people think? Do they want it? Do they not? No. I'm just
look at this podcast. You reached out to me and said, I've had this nudge to get on the podcast. Can I come on? I was like, yeah, of course. But that was something you probably would have held back from, because I think I asked you a while ago and you were like, oh, one day.
Yeah, I totally did, because I was just like, oh yeah, really? No. But yeah.
Who wants to hear me? But yeah. And I think I'm so glad that we've went through the whole journey as well, because I think people are going to see so much in what you've shared that actually it might prompt people to go, right, I need to stop. I need to do something different. And I really hope people do from this episode, because that's the point.
Yeah, well, I hope so too, because actually going over all that again is like a huge reminder to me of like how different things are, and where I am now doing what I do. You just couldn't really compare the two. And I was chatting to someone the other day. I knew her from my previous business with mums and babies, and she was like, oh my God, she said, it's like you've gone through some kind of awakening. I think they were the words she used. She's just looking at me. We're on the call. She said to me, it's just like, it's so inspirational to just have somebody that's, because she was, although I put on a front before and I thought everything was okay, I was clearly still a very different person to what I am now. And she's even looking at you like it's like a huge weight's been lifted, and just the way you are. And you don't really realise yourself, like, you feel better.
Yeah.
But and I know your family see, but when somebody that you've not seen for quite a while, that you don't really know massively well, says it, you're like, oh. And it makes you stop and reflect.
Yeah.
Because again, we can get caught up with getting on with life, can't we?
Yeah. And I mean, I've followed the stuff you do, and I always comment and say how, amazing you're doing, because genuinely from when we first met and the things that you've done since and the things you're putting out now, you are a different person completely. The conversation we're having now, I think you would have watched or listened to somebody having that conversation back then and been like, that's all right, but I can't do any of that. And actually, like, just talking about the freedom you've got in your work and the time you've given to your family, that's such a big shift. That first walk, I don't think you could have ever have dreamed of that was possible.
Well, no, and I do like comparing to that first walk, because it just really, but no, it does, because it just takes you right back to, like, I mean, I wouldn't even have been in the headspace to think what was possible then. And I certainly would never, ever have had being a wellness coach on the radar. That literally did. It's the weirdest feeling I've ever had, I've experienced. It literally just popped into my head out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And as soon as it came in, I was like, yeah. And that was kind of the the deal was done. It took me a little while, but it's just funny how things work out.
Yeah.
And I do still struggle a little bit with that. Oh, I should be working a bit harder and maybe a few more hours. I'm wandering around and people have to work and feel a bit bad. But I'm like, well, no, why? If it works and I've got the balance, why wouldn't I take this as it is? It's possible. So
yeah, that's a big thing for anybody. I mean, obviously I teach people about energetics of running a business, and your business can run however the hell you want it to run. It doesn't have to be a prescribed way. And your business is part of your life. It's not something that should be running you. You should be running it.
Yeah.
So that's the big difference. It's got to work for you and what you want to achieve in life. And if it's not, then something's got to change, because you've got a job.
Yeah. And when you have a business, you do live it and breathe it, because it becomes part of you.
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to not get dragged in so much that you are like working all those ridiculous hours, thinking you've got to do all those things. And that's something that I'm really focusing on when I'm thinking about, people say how things should be done, and I'm like, well, no, because that doesn't work for me.
No.
That I want this to be like, the big thing like I'm working on is just like being authentic and being me, and it's got to fit into how my life is as well, not expectations of other people.
That's how success happens. This is the bit that people can't get their head around. It's like they've heard all these ways to run a business. They've heard all these strategies and things they've got to do, but actually none of that works until your energy is at the peak state. and your mindset is behind it. So running it in the way somebody else, it's worked for somebody else, but then your energy being absolutely zapped is not going to attract what you want.
Well, no, that reminds me of early days when you said to me, Jen, when I had my other fitness business, you're like, Jen, you don't need to be putting yourself out there and doing this, that, and the other. And you just, things will just come. And I gave you another one of my looks, like, yeah, right, whatever. Didn't I?
Yeah.
Right. And interestingly, because I consciously took that time out, I still had classes running in the background, but I wasn't promoting, I wasn't pushing things. In those few weeks after you'd said that, I had more inquiries for personal training in a week than I had in years. And I was like, damn it, she's right again.
And you're a projector, aren't you, when it comes to human design? So I had to really concentrate on, as a projector, the invitations come to you. You're not meant to go and create that space. So get an invite and act on it. But if it feels good, but your whole being is about you becoming just the best you, and everything starts to come your way. And that was a big shift, wasn't it? That you just were like, what is this woman talking about?
Turned all those people away because I didn't want to do it. And prior to that, I'd been taking them on. I think I need people and I need to. But my mindset had already shifted.
Yeah.
Knowing that wasn't what I wanted to do. So,
and that's the universe just giving you a little nod, like, are you sure you want to go in a different direction? And then suddenly, as soon as you cancelled them, you were like, have this epiphany.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's such an amazing story, Jen. Like, I'm just so glad that you've come on and shared it. And I always said I would have you on here. And look at you now, you were jumping at the chance. So
how things changed.
I know. Honestly, I can't wait to get this one out. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
But is there anything you want to share about what you've got going on at the moment? Anything you want to share with the audience, how to follow you? Everything will go in the show notes as well. But anything quick you want to say about how to work with you?
Yeah, well, pretty much I offer one-to-one coaching, but I'm also at the moment starting to set up like a series of different workshops. So I guess that's what I'm working on at the moment. And I'm actually kind of still finding my way with what I want to do. Because that's still a journey with your business, isn't it? That you're trying these different things. So workshops is my next thing. And then I'll be looking into doing some group programs as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
And that's the thing, try it on, see what fits. If you don't like it, stop it. People get so hung up, I've got to find the right thing, I've got to put the right course out, I've got to do the right offer. No, you don't. You just do the right one for now. And then if you don't like it, you tweak it and you change.
And on saying that, I think just like strongly listen to how something feels, because somebody suggested I do something and I was like, not really sure. But then when I had an idea for this workshop, I had it, but then once I got into it, it just flowed.
Yeah.
There was no like, oh, what do I put in and what do I say and what do I do? It just flowed. So to me, that's the sign that that's the one to do. Yeah. Because I know in the past when I've tried to run courses or put courses together when it's been a real struggle, it's like, why am I doing this? Yeah. I experienced that a few times when I was doing like the specialist pelvic health programs in my fitness business. Whereas when I started doing the wellness stuff, so much of it just flows. And that difference is because it comes from me. My program is from my journey. It'll still help so many people because obviously it's still tailored to every individual. But that's just an amazing feeling in itself, that I don't need somebody else's content or their program details or anything. It's all mine, and everything just flows. Doesn't flow, then I won't battle at my desk. What can I put in here? So I'm just not going to do that.
Honestly, this is like mind blowing. If anybody had met Jen, I can't even remember when we started working together, but the stuff you've done and the things that you've learned and carried on learning and just what you're now applying.
2021 it
was it? But what you're applying to your business and your life, that's the key. It's not just you've learned it and you've kind of parked it and you're moving on. Like, you're applying all this stuff and seeing the benefits of it. It's like talking to a whole new person.
If I'm saying it, I'm like, is this coming out of my mouth? Is this me?
But Yeah.
It just feels it really does just, it feels like, I can't really find the words. Like I say, going from that struggling to put programs together and to do stuff, and you're going on other people's training courses, and because it's to do with the body, you're having to use the knowledge and the information and their guidance, and you're kind of trying to be you in them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It always felt a real struggle.
Yeah.
Whereas now it doesn't. I even put a post out the other day, which I couldn't believe I did myself, because even last year I approached someone about doing a talk at one of the sessions, and she's like, well, what's your speciality? And I was a bit like, oh, and I started tripping over myself. But even within 12 months, I put a post out the other day saying, I class myself as an expert in stress management.
Yeah.
And it isn't because I've been on a fancy training course. It's because I've lived it and I've breathed it.
Yeah.
And I know firsthand, like, how it affects you and what it takes to overcome it.
Yeah.
I would never have said that 12 months ago. I'd have been like, what do I do?
You are an expert in stress management.
Yeah, that's a massive difference. So even as these last few months have passed, things are still moving.
And the big thing as well, you know, putting the dots together in the two journeys, you were probably the first person that I supported through an entrepreneurial journey. I'd worked with entrepreneurs before, but more from a point of view of connecting to their intuition. Whereas actually we dove deep into your business and your personal side of how that works. So probably birthed what I'm now doing, where I'm working with more entrepreneurs and the energetics of their business. So you've probably spiraled a path in me as well that's opened a new door.
It's interesting how it all works, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it really is. It's just amazing to see it in real life and be able to talk about it, especially in a way that hopefully will help so many people.
Yeah, well, I hope so, because even just talking to you about it today, I do reflect on it myself, but it's like anything, when you say it out loud,
yeah,
and you really go right back and then to where I am now. I mean, transformation, really, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, you should be proud. It's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you for joining me, and I will pop everything in the show notes of how to follow you and how to work with you and how to get on one of those workshops.
Yeah, thank you.
But thanks again.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
I hope you agree how incredible this episode was. Jen shares so much about how she manages her own stress now, how she felt when she was in burnout and what that meant to her life, her family, how she's learned to actually let go, manage her own diary, do things that feel uncomfortable, as in like take a break, go and get outside and walk when she wants creative ideas, do all the things that back in the day she would never, ever have done. So if you're in that space where you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling stressed, please reach out to Jen, because she can really help you move through from that point of feeling overwhelmed to actually thriving in life. And who doesn't want to be thriving? So make sure you follow Jen on social media. Make sure you contact her if you're feeling like you want to work with her deeper, because she's incredible. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and make sure you follow Jen and follow her story and reach out if you need help and support.